The sound of a child screaming can shatter glass. But in the most exclusive restaurant in New York, it was shattering a mafia don's patience. Riccardo Moretti had a gun on the table, a terrified staff trembling against the wall, and a 3-year-old son who wouldn't stop crying. Everyone thought someone was about to die. Then, a nobody waitress walked right past the armed guards. She didn't tremble. She didn't beg. She just picked up the crying boy, looked the most dangerous man in the city in the eye, and delivered 7 words that changed everything. He isn't being a brat. He just needs a mom. What happened next? You won't believe the secret she was hiding. The crystal chandelier at Il Destino vibrated. It wasn't from an earthquake, and it wasn't from the subway rumbling beneath the Manhattan pavement. It was from the lungs of 3-year-old Leo Moretti. The restaurant was silent, save for the child's piercing wails. It was 8:00 p.m. on a Friday prime time. Usually the clinking of silverware against bone china and the low hum of deals being made filled the air. Tonight the air was thick with a terrifying, suffocating tension. At the center table, the king's table, sat Riccardo Rico Moretti. Rico was 32 years old, wore a bespoke Brioni suit that cost more than most people's cars, and had eyes like shattered ice. He was the capo of the Moretti crime family, a man who had dismantled rival syndicates with a fountain pen and a silenced pistol. But right now he looked defeated. "Leo," Rico growled, his voice low and dangerous. "Basta. Enough." No. I want no." Leo screamed, sweeping a plate of untouched truffle risotto off the table. The ceramic shattered loudly against the marble floor. The entire restaurant flinched. The maitre d', a sweating man named Marco, approached with trembling hands. "Mr. Moretti, is everything perhaps a different dish for the young master?" Rico slowly turned his head. The look he gave Marco could have curdled milk. "He doesn't want food, Marco. He wants to torture me. Do I look like a man who knows how to stop a toddler?" Rico ran a hand through his dark hair, gripping the roots. He had been a widower for 6 months. 6 months of hell. 6 months since his wife, Elena, had been gunned down in a drive-by that was meant for him. Since then, Leo hadn't spoken a full sentence. He only screamed. "Get him out of here," Rico snapped at his head of security, a giant named Dante. Dante reached for the boy. "Come on, little boss." Leo went feral. He bit Dante's hand, drawing blood. Dante recoiled, cursing under his breath. "Damn it!" Rico slammed his hand on the table. The silverware jumped. "Is everyone in my employ incompetent? Silence him, or I shut this place down." The threat hung heavy. Rico wasn't speaking metaphorically. He owned the building. He could burn it down tonight if the mood struck him. In the back corner near the kitchen doors, Clara Vance adjusted her apron. She was 24, with tired eyes and hair pulled back in a messy bun. She had been working a double shift on an empty stomach. She needed this job. She had rent to pay and a past to outrun. "Don't do it, Clara," whispered Sarah, another waitress. "That's the butcher of Brooklyn. If you go over there, you're dead." Clara watched the little boy. She didn't see a brat. She didn't see a mafia heir. She saw a tiny red-faced human being who was drowning in grief. She saw the way he was clutching his own shirt, gasping for air between sobs. She knew that gasp. She knew that panic. Clara ignored Sarah. She grabbed a glass of warm milk from the service counter, dropped a single cube of sugar into it, and walked onto the floor. "Hey, you!" Marco hissed, trying to grab her arm. "Get back to the kitchen." Clara pulled away and kept walking. The sound of her cheap, rubber-soled shoes squeaking on the marble was the only sound other than Leo's screams. She stopped at the table. Rico looked up. His hand hovered near the inside of his jacket, where his sidearm rested. "Who are you?" Clara didn't look at Rico. She looked at Leo. She knelt down, ruining her tights on the wet risotto and broken ceramic. "Hey there," she said softly. Her voice wasn't high-pitched or patronizing. It was low, steady, a grounding wire. Leo paused, just for a second. He hiccuped, his tear-filled eyes widening as he looked at this stranger who was sitting in the mess with him. "It's loud in here, isn't it?" Clara whispered. "Too many people. Too many lights." Leo stared at her. He took a shaky breath. Clara reached out, not to grab him, but to offer the glass. "Warm milk with a sugar cube. Someone I used to know liked this when the world got too loud." Leo looked at the milk. Then he looked at Rico. Then back at Clara. Slowly, the boy's tiny hands reached out. He took the glass. He brought it to his lips and took a sip. The screaming stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than the noise. Clara reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a simple white napkin. She gently wiped the tears and snot from his face. "There," she said, smoothing his hair back. "You're okay. You're safe." Leo leaned into her touch. His eyes drooped. Within 30 seconds, the adrenaline crash hit him. He slumped forward, resting his head on Clara's shoulder, right there on the restaurant floor. Rico Moretti sat frozen. He stared at his son. The son who hadn't slept through the night in half a year, curled up against a waitress who smelled like dish soap and vanilla. Rico looked at Clara. For the first time, he really looked at her. The fraying collar of her uniform, the dark circles under her amber eyes, the scar on her chin. "How did you do that?" Rico asked, his voice hoarse. "Nannies with PhDs in child psychology couldn't do that." Clara carefully stood up, lifting the heavy toddler with surprising strength. She transferred him into Dante's waiting arms, though Leo whined at the loss of contact. Clara brushed the risotto off her knees. She looked Rico in the eye, a capital offense in his world. "He isn't difficult, Mr. Moretti," she said, "and he isn't hungry for risotto." "Then what is it?" Rico demanded, standing up to his full height. He towered over her. Clara didn't flinch. "He's terrified. He's grieving. He just needs a mom." The silence stretched. Marco, the manager, looked like he was about to faint. "You did not mention the dead wife. You did not talk back to the Don." Rico's jaw tightened. "Get out." Clara blinked. "Excuse me." "You heard me," Rico said, his voice cold again, the wall slamming back up. "Leave my table. In fact, leave the restaurant." Clara felt a sting of humiliation, but she nodded. Gladly. She turned and walked away. As soon as the kitchen doors swung shut behind her, Rico exhaled, sinking back into his chair. He looked at Dante, who was holding the now sleeping Leo. "Dante," Rico said quietly. "Boss. Find out who she is. Find out everything. Where she lives, who she owes money to, what she eats for breakfast." "You want me to handle her?" Dante asked, implying violence. Rico looked at his sleeping son. "No. I want to hire her." Clara was fired before she even finished her shift. Marco didn't care that she had quieted the VIP's son. He cared that she had humiliated the establishment by sitting on the floor and speaking out of turn to the owner of the city. "Here's your payout for the week." Marco sneered, shoving a wad of cash into her hand at the back exit. "Don't come back, Clara. You're trouble." Clara stood in the alleyway. It had started to rain, a cold, miserable New York drizzle. She counted the cash. $200. It wouldn't even cover the electricity bill, let alone the rent hike her landlord, Mr. Henderson, had slapped on her door yesterday. She pulled her thin coat tighter around herself and began to walk. The alley was dark, smelling of wet garbage and ozone. She was 3 blocks away, waiting at a crosswalk when a black Cadillac Escalade rolled up beside her. The window hummed down. "Get in," a deep voice commanded. Clara stiffened. She knew that voice. She turned to see Rico Moretti sitting in the back seat, the interior illuminated by the soft glow of a laptop screen. "I'm not a prostitute, Mr. Moretti," Clara said, staring straight ahead. "And I don't take rides from strangers." "I'm not a stranger. I'm the man who owns the restaurant you just got fired from," Rico said. "And it's raining. Get in, or I'll have Dante pick you up and put you in." Clara looked at the hulking driver in the front seat. She weighed her options. Getting in was dangerous. Walking home and getting evicted was certain doom. She opened the door and slid onto the leather seat. It was warm inside. It smelled of expensive cologne and leather. "Seatbelt," Rico said. "Where are you taking me?" "To discuss your new employment." Clara laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "I'm a waitress, Mr. Moretti, unless you need someone to serve risotto to your enemies. I don't see what use I am to the Mafia." Rico turned to her. In the streetlights passing by, his face was sharp, angular, and incredibly tired. "I don't need a waitress," he said. "I need a wife." Clara choked on air. "Excuse me." Rico tapped a file folder on the seat between them. "Clara Vance, age 24, born in Chicago. No living family. Dropped out of nursing school 3 years ago. Moved to New York to start over. Currently 2 months behind on rent at a studio apartment in Queens." Clara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. "You stalked me." "I vetted you. There's a difference." Rico opened the file. "My son Leo. He hasn't connected with anyone since Elena died. Tonight was the first time he stopped crying without sedatives or exhaustion taking over." "So you want a nanny?" Clara said. "No, I have enemies, Clara. The Salvi family is circling like vultures. They think I'm weak because I'm a grieving widower with an uncontrollable child. They think my house is in chaos." Rico closed the file. "I need to show them stability. I need to show them I have moved on. I need a fiancé to appear at the upcoming peace summit in 2 weeks. And Leo needs... he needs whatever it is you did tonight." "This is insane," Clara whispered. "I can't pretend to be a mob wife." "The pay is $10,000 a week," Rico stated flatly, "plus a signing bonus of $50,000. Your debt's wiped clean. Mr. Henderson and his eviction notices disappear." Clara's mouth went dry. $50,000. That was freedom. That was a new life. "And if I refuse, then you get out of the car," Rico said, "and you go back to your life. I won't harm you. I'm not a monster despite what the papers say." "But Leo..." Rico looked out the window. "Leo will wake up screaming again tonight." Clara looked at the powerful man, who suddenly looked very small. She thought of the little boy with the terrified eyes. She thought of the empty crib she had left behind in Chicago, the secret she kept locked away in the deepest part of her heart, the reason she knew how to stop a crying child. "What are the rules?" Clara asked softly. Rico looked back at her, his eyes dark. You live in my house. You care for Leo. You wear the ring. You smile at the cameras. But you do not ask about my business. You do not go into the basement. And you never, ever fall in love with me. Clara met his gaze. That won't be a problem, Mr. Moretti. I don't believe in love anymore. Rico extended his hand. Then we have a deal. Clara shook it. His skin was rough, his grip firm. Drive, Dante, Rico said. The car sped up, heading toward the bridges, toward the sprawling estates of Long Island. Clara watched the city lights fade. She had just sold her soul to the devil to save a child. She had no idea that the devil was the only one who could save her from what was coming. The Moretti estate was less of a home and more of a fortress. High stone walls, topped with razor-wire cameras, pivoting on every corner, and men with bulges under their jackets patrolling the grounds. When the Escalade pulled up, the front doors opened to reveal a grand foyer that was cold and pristine. It felt like a museum, not a place where a child lived. Your room is in the East Wing, Rico said, stepping out of the car. Leo's room is adjoining. My room is down the hall. Stay out of the West Wing. That is my office, and, he paused, just stay out. Clara was shown to her room by a housekeeper named Maria, who looked at her with a mixture of pity and suspicion. The room was larger than Clara's entire apartment. A silk dress was laid out on the bed. Mr. Moretti expects you at breakfast at 7:20 a.m. sharp, Maria said. Don't be late. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. The silence of the house was oppressive. Around 2:00 a.m., she heard it again. The screaming. She bolted out of bed, running barefoot into the hallway. She pushed open the door to Leo's room. Leo was standing in his crib, thrashing against the wooden bars, his face purple with exertion. Mama! Mama! Rico was already there, trying to hold him, but Leo was pushing him away, scratching at Rico's chest. Leo, please! Rico was pleading, sounding exhausted. Clara didn't hesitate. She stepped into the room. Let me. Rico looked up, startled. He was shirtless, revealing a tapestry of scars across his torso, knife wounds, bullet grazes. Clara forced herself to look at his face, not his body. He doesn't want me, Rico said bitterly, stepping back. Clara approached the crib. She didn't pick Leo up immediately. She started to hum, a low, melancholic tune. Lavender's blue dilly-dilly, lavender's green. Leo froze. His head snapped toward her. Hi, Leo, Clara whispered. Bad dreams. She lowered the crib rail and lifted him. He was hot, sweaty. She carried him to the rocking chair by the window. She sat down, rocking back and forth, continuing to hum. Rico stood in the doorway, watching. He leaned against the frame, crossing his arms. The moonlight washed over them. For a moment, the dangerous Don looked like just a man watching his family. But they weren't his family. She was a stranger. Where did you learn that song? Rico asked softly once Leo's breathing had evened out. Clara kept rocking. My mother used to sing it. You have a magic touch, Clara. It's not magic, Clara said, her voice tight. It's grief. I know what it feels like to wake up looking for someone who isn't there. Rico walked into the room. He stopped a foot away from the chair. The tension between them shifted. It wasn't hostile anymore. It was charged with something else. A shared understanding of pain. What happened to you, Clara? Clara looked up at him. That wasn't in the file, Mr. Moretti. You pay me to be a mother to him. You don't pay me to share my history with you." Rico stared at her for a long moment. A flicker of respect passed through his eyes. "Touché. Go to sleep, Clara. Tomorrow the tailors arrive. We have to make you look like a Moretti." He turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "And call me Rico. If we're going to lie to the world, we should at least get the names right." The next few days were a whirlwind. Clara was poked, prodded, dressed in silk and velvet. She was taught how to walk in stilettos, how to hold a wine glass, how to smile without showing teeth. But the real work was with Leo. She spent hours on the floor with him, building block towers, reading books. She learned that he loved dinosaurs and hated peas. She learned that he was terrified of loud noises. She also learned about the house. One afternoon, while Leo was napping, Clara wandered down the hallway. She found herself near the west wing. The door was heavy oak, slightly ajar. She knew the rules. Stay out. But curiosity was a dangerous thing. She pushed the door open. It was a study. Dark wood leather books. But on the wall was a massive painting of a woman. She was breathtakingly beautiful with dark hair and Rico's eyes. Elena. Under the painting was a shrine. Candles, flowers, and files. Clara stepped closer. The files were spread out on the desk. They were police reports, autopsy photos. Clara gasped. She saw a photo of a car, a silver sedan riddled with bullets. Her hand flew to her mouth. Flashback. Chicago. 3 years ago, she was walking home from the clinic. A silver sedan sped past her, chased by a black van. Gunshots. The sedan crashed into a lamppost right in front of her. Clara had run to help. She saw the woman inside, bleeding, dying. The woman had grabbed Clara's hand, leaving a bloody smear. "Protect him!" the woman had gasped. Clara snapped back to the present. She looked at the date on the file. It wasn't 3 years ago. It was 6 months ago. New York. But the car, the method, it was exactly the same hit she had witnessed in Chicago. The one that had made her flee the city, because the shooter had seen her face. "What are you doing in here?" The voice was like a whip crack. Clara spun around. Rico was standing in the doorway, and this time he wasn't looking at her with respect. He was holding a gun. The door was open," Clara stammered, backing up against the desk. Rico holstered the gun, but crossed the room in 2 strides. He grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. "I told you, the West Wing is forbidden." "I'm sorry," Clara cried. I saw the photo." "You saw nothing," Rico hissed. He pulled her close, his face inches from hers. His eyes were wooled. "Do you know what happens to people who know too much in this house? They disappear." "Rico, you're hurting me," she whispered. He froze. He looked at his hand on her arm. He let go as if he had been burned. He stepped back, running a hand over his face. "Get out! Go to Leo! And Clara—" She paused at the door, shaking. "If you ever enter this room again, the deal is off. And you won't just be fired." Clara ran. She ran back to the East Wing, her heart pounding. She realized then that this wasn't just a job. She had walked into a web of conspiracy. The hit she saw in Chicago, and the hit that killed Rico's wife, they were connected. And if the killer was still out there, they might recognize Clara just as easily as she recognized their work. She wasn't just a fake fiancée. She was a loose end. 2 weeks passed. The night of the Peace Summit arrived. The Moretti estate was transformed. The fortress became a ballroom. String quartets played champagne, flowed, and the most dangerous criminals in America gathered in tuxedos. Clara wore a dress of emerald green satin that hugged every curve. A diamond necklace, Rico's mother's, rested at her throat. "You look—" Rico paused as she walked down the stairs. He cleared his throat. "Adequate." "High praise from the Don," Clara quipped, though her stomach was in knots. "Stay close to me," Rico murmured, offering his arm. "Tonight we meet Don Salvi. He is the one who ordered the hit on my wife. I can't prove it yet, but I know. If he killed her, why are we having dinner with him? Because in this world you keep your friends close and your enemies within stabbing distance." They entered the ballroom. All eyes turned to them, the butcher of Brooklyn and his mystery woman. "Smile," Rico whispered. He placed a possessive hand on her lower back. His touch was hot through the silk. A man approached them. He was older, with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Don Salvi. "Ricardo," Salvi boomed, "and this must be the lady who tamed the beast." "Clara," Rico said. "This is Don Salvi." Clara extended her hand. "A pleasure." Salvi kissed her knuckles. His lips were cold. "Charmed. You know you look familiar, my dear. Have we met?" Clara's heart stopped. "I don't think so. I'm from the Midwest." "Ah, a country girl." Salvi chuckled. He turned to the man standing behind him. "Meet my new underboss, Luca." Clara looked at Luca. He was a man in his 30s, handsome in a cruel way. He reached out to shake her hand. As his sleeve rode up, Clara saw it. A tattoo on his wrist. A snake eating its own tail. The Ouroboros. Clara's vision blurred. The noise of the party faded. Flashback, Chicago. The gunman stepping out of the black van. He raised the pistol. The street lamp caught his wrist. The snake tattoo. It was him. Luca was the man who had killed the woman in Chicago, and if Rico suspected Salvi's men killed his wife using the same method, Luca was a professional hitman. A cleaner. Clara pulled her hand away too quickly. "Nice to meet you." Luca narrowed his eyes. He tilted his head, studying her face. "You seem nervous, Signora." "Just overwhelmed," Clara managed to say. "Rico, could I get some air?" Rico sensed her panic. He tightened his grip on her waist. "Of course, darling." He led her to the balcony. As soon as the glass doors closed, he spun her around. "What is it you're shaking?" "Rico," Clara gasped, clutching his lapels. "That man, Luca." "What about him? He's the one?" "The one what?" "The one I saw in Chicago, 3 years ago. I witnessed a murder, Rico. A woman was shot in her car. I saw the shooter. I saw his tattoo. A snake eating its tail." Rico went rigid. "Luca has that tattoo." "Yes, he's the killer. And if he's here, Rico, he works for Salvi." Rico's eyes turned murderous. "Salvi didn't just kill Elena. He's been running a hit squad across the country." "He recognized me," Clara whispered. "I saw it in his eyes. He knows I'm the witness who got away." Suddenly, the balcony door opened. "Ricardo," a voice called out. It was Marco, the restaurant manager, who was helping cater the event. But Marco looked pale. He had a gun pressed to his back. Behind him stood Luca, and he was holding a silenced pistol. "I thought I knew you," Luca said, stepping onto the balcony and sliding the door shut, locking it. "The little nurse from Chicago. You have 9 lives, sweetheart." Rico stepped in front of Clara. Luca, you're making a mistake. The mistake was missing her 3 years ago. Luca grinned. Don Salvi sends his regards, Rico. He figures if he kills your new fiancée the same way he killed the first one, you'll finally break. Rico didn't move. You think you can kill us both and walk out of here? Who's going to stop me? Your men are drinking my wine. And Dante is currently taking a nap in the pantry with a knife in his throat. Rico's face fell. Dante was dead. Clara, Rico said, his voice terrifyingly calm. When I move, you run. Jump off the balcony. What, it's 20 feet. Better a broken leg than a bullet in the head. So romantic, Luca sneered. He raised the gun. Rico exploded into motion. He didn't go for his own gun. He lunged at Marco, shoving the manager into Luca. Thwip! A silenced shot went wild, shattering the glass door. Run! Rico roared, tackling Luca. Clara scrambled over the stone railing. She looked down. Dark bushes below. She didn't think. She jumped. She crashed into the hedge, scratching her face, twisting her ankle. Pain shot up her leg, but she scrambled up. Gunshots rang out from the balcony above. Loud ones now. Rico was fighting back. Clara limped toward the main house, screaming for help. But then she stopped. Leo. If Luca was here, if Salvi was making a move, they wouldn't just target Rico. They would target the air. Clara forgot her ankle. She forgot the pain. She turned and ran toward the back of the house, toward the trellis that led to the nursery window. She had to get to the boy. Because she wasn't just his nanny anymore. She was the only mum he had left. The pain in Clara's ankle was a living thing. It was a hot, jagged spike that drove up her leg with every limping step she took across the wet lawn. The rain had turned into a torrential downpour, masking the sounds of the chaotic gunfight erupting inside the mansion. Clara didn't look back at the balcony where she had left Rico. She couldn't. If he was dead, she would mourn him later. If he was alive, he was fighting a war. Her war was upstairs in the nursery. She reached the base of the east wing. The trellis covered in thick, thorny ivy stretched up to the second-floor window, Leo's room. Come on, she whispered to herself, her teeth chattering from the cold and shock. Come on, Clara. She kicked off her remaining stiletto. Barefoot, she stepped onto the wooden lattice. The first step made her scream, silently biting her lip until she tasted iron. Her twisted ankle throbbed violently, threatening to give way. She dragged her weight up with her arms, her fingers digging into the wet wood and thorns. The silk of her emerald dress tore, snagging on the rough vines. She didn't care. 1 rung. 2 rungs. Don't look down. Above her, the nursery window was dark. A flash of lightning illuminated the glass. Inside the house, the muffled thump-thump of silenced gunshots echoed. They were getting closer to the east wing. Clara reached the window ledge. Her arms were shaking, her muscles burning with exhaustion. She tried the window. Locked. Panic flared in her chest. She pressed her face to the cold glass. Inside, she could see the silhouette of the crib. Leo, she mouthed. She made a fist, wrapping it in the hem of her ruined dress. She looked around. No rocks. Nothing. She had to use her elbow. She pulled back and struck the pane of glass near the latch. It didn't break. She struck it again harder, putting her entire body weight into the blow. Crack. A spiderweb fracture appeared. 1 more. She slammed her elbow into the glass, screaming through her gritted teeth. The pain shattered inward. Shards of glass rained onto the carpet. Clara reached in, undid the latch, and shoved the window up. She tumbled into the room, landing hard on her shoulder, rolling over broken glass. The room was quiet. Too quiet. "Leo," she whispered, dragging herself up. She limped to the crib. It was empty. The blood drained from her face. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Leo." A small whimper came from under the rocking chair in the corner, the same chair where she had sung to him on her first night. Clara scrambled across the floor. Leo was curled into a tight ball, clutching his stuffed dinosaur, his eyes wide and terrified in the shadows. "Mama," he whispered. It was the first time he had ever used that word for her. Clara's heart broke and soared at the same time. She pulled him into her arms, burying her face in his neck. He was trembling violently. "I've got you," she whispered fiercely. "I've got you, baby." Suddenly the handle of the nursery door turned. Clara froze. She hadn't locked it. She had come in through the window. She looked around frantically for a weapon. A lamp. A toy. The door creaked open. A figure stepped into the room, backlit by the hallway light. It wasn't Rico. It was a man in a tuxedo holding a knife. It was one of the security guards. A man Clara had said good morning to for 2 weeks. A traitor. "Sorry, Miss Vance," the man said, his voice void of emotion. "Salvi pays better." He stepped forward. Clara pushed Leo behind her. She stood up, favoring her good leg. She was a waitress, a failed nursing student. She was 5'5" and unarmed. He was 6'2" and trained to kill. "Don't touch him," Clara warned, her voice low. It wasn't a plea. It was a growl. The guard laughed. "You think you can stop me?" He lunged. Clara didn't back away. She dropped. As the knife slashed through the air where her neck had been, she grabbed the heavy ceramic base of the humidifier from the floor. With a primal scream, she swung it upward. Crack! The ceramic connected with the guard's kneecap. Bone crunched. The man howled, stumbling back, dropping to one knee. But he didn't drop the knife. He slashed out blindly the blade, catching Clara's forearm. A line of fire erupted on her skin. Warm blood, soaking her sleeve instantly. Clara cried out, but didn't stop. She shoved the heavy rocking chair toward him, pinning him against the wall for a split second. "Run Leo into the closet," she screamed. The guard shoved the chair away with a roar of rage. He scrambled up, eyes murderous. "You little bit—" Bang! The sound was deafening in the small room. The guard's head snapped back. He crumpled to the floor, motionless. Clara gasped, spinning around. Rico stood in the doorway. He looked like a wreck. His tuxedo jacket was gone. His white shirt was soaked in blood, some of it, his most of it not. He was breathing heavily, his chest heaving, a smoking pistol in his hand. He looked at the dead guard. Then he looked at Clara. He saw the blood dripping from her arm. He saw the glass shards in her hair. He saw the fierce, protective way she was standing in front of the closet where his son was hiding. He dropped the gun and crossed the room in 3 strides. "Clara!" he choked out. He grabbed her face in his hands, his thumbs smearing blood on her cheek. His eyes searched hers, frantic, terrified. "You came back," he whispered, as if he couldn't believe it. "I told you to run." "I couldn't leave him," Clara sobbed, the adrenaline finally crashing. "He was alone." Rico pulled her into his chest, hugging her so tight it hurt. For a second, he wasn't the Don. He was just a man who had almost lost everything. "Boss?" A voice shouted from the hallway. Rico pulled back, his face hardening instantly. It was his loyal lieutenant, a young man named Rocco. "The ground floor is overrun," Rocco said, panting. "Salvi brought an army. Luca is hunting for you. We can't hold the east wing." Rico looked at Clara, then at the closet where Leo was peeking out. "The vault," Rico commanded. "Rico, you're bleeding," Clara said, noticing a dark stain spreading on his side. "Move," Rico ordered, ignoring his own pain. He scooped Leo up in one arm and grabbed Clara's uninjured hand with the other. "We have to disappear." The vault was not just a panic room. It was a subterranean bunker built beneath the wine cellar, encased in 2 feet of reinforced concrete and steel. The heavy steel door hissed shut, sealing with a mechanical thud that cut off the world. The sounds of gunfire, rain, and screaming vanished instantly. The silence was sudden and heavy. The room was Stark Cott's medical supplies monitors showing the camera feeds of the house above and a ventilation system that hummed quietly. Rico set Leo down on one of the cots. The boy was eerily quiet, his eyes wide and vacant. The trauma was setting in. Rico turned away, leaning heavily against the steel wall. He slid down until he was sitting on the floor, clutching his side. His face was grey. "Rico." Clara forgot her own throbbing ankle. She limped over to the medical cabinet, tearing it open. Her nursing training kicked in, overriding her fear. She grabbed gauze, antiseptic, and a suture kit. She knelt beside him. "Let me see," she commanded. Rico tried to wave her away. "Check Leo first." "Leo is in shock, but he's physically fine. You are bleeding out on the floor. Shirt off. Now." Rico looked at her. The submissive waitress was gone. The terrified girl was gone. This was a woman in her element. He obeyed, unbuttoning his ruined shirt with shaking hands. The wound was a deep graze along his ribs. A bullet had passed through the flesh, but missed the vital organs. It was ugly, but not fatal if stopped. "It needs stitches," Clara said, her voice clinical and steady. "This is going to hurt. I don't have anesthesia." "Do it," Rico gritted out. Clara worked. Her hands, which had trembled when holding a wine glass hours ago, were now rock steady. She cleaned the wound, ignoring Rico's sharp intake of breath. She threaded the needle. As she stitched his skin, the intimacy of the moment settled over them. They were inches apart. She could smell the gunpowder and rain on him. He could smell the sweat and terror on her. "Why?" Rico asked, his voice rough. He was watching her face, studying the way her brow furrowed in concentration. Clara didn't look up. "Why what? Why did you come back? You had a way out. You could have disappeared into the night. You know what Salvi does to people. Why risk dying for a child who isn't yours?" Clara tied the final knot and snipped the thread. She taped the gauze over the wound. Only then did she sit back, resting against the cold wall next to him. She looked across the room at Leo, who had curled up with a blanket and finally fallen asleep. "Because I know what it's like to be him," Clara said softly. "And I know what it's like to be the one left behind." Rico turned his head to look at her. "Tell me." Clara took a deep breath. She pulled her knees to her chest. "I didn't just drop out of nursing school because of money, Rico. I dropped out because I was pregnant." Rico went still. "I had a daughter," Clara whispered. Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't fall. "Her name was Mia. She was born with a heart defect. I worked 3 jobs trying to pay for the surgeries. I did everything. But it wasn't enough." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "She died in my arms in a hospital room that looked a lot like this one. Cold, sterile. She was 3 years old, the same age as Leo. Rico reached out. His hand, large and calloused, covered hers. After she died, Clara continued, her voice shaking, I felt hollow. I kept hearing her cry at night. I kept waking up to go check a crib that wasn't there anymore. That's why I left Chicago. That's why I was walking home that night when I saw Luca kill that woman. I was walking because I couldn't stand the silence of my empty apartment. She turned to Rico. Her amber eyes were raw, stripped of all defenses. When I saw Leo screaming in the restaurant, I didn't see a brat. I saw a child who was screaming because the world had been ripped away from him. And when I held him, for the first time in 2 years, the silence inside me stopped. Rico stared at her. The revelation hung between them. She wasn't just a hired actress. She was a mother, without a child, healing a child without a mother. Clara, Rico murmured. The name sounded like a prayer on his lips. He leaned in. The distance between them evaporated. He didn't kiss her. Not yet. He pressed his forehead against hers. It was a gesture of immense vulnerability for a man who never lowered his guard. I am sorry, he whispered. I am sorry for your loss, and I am sorry I dragged you into this hell. I walked into it, Clara replied, her voice barely audible. I chose to stay. You are the bravest person I have ever met, Rico said. He pulled back slightly to look her in the eyes. Salvi thinks he can break me by taking my family. He doesn't realize he just gave me a reason to burn the world down. He glanced at the monitors. On the screen, shadowy figures were moving through the hallway above. They were searching for the entrance to the vault. Rico's expression shifted. The sadness was replaced by a cold, calculated fury. The dawn was back. They are looking for the hidden door, Rico said. It will hold for a few hours, but not forever. What do we do? Clara asked. Rico stood up. He grimaced at the pain in his side, but pushed through it. He walked to a weapon rack on the far wall. He racked the slide of an assault rifle. We don't hide anymore, Rico said. There is a tunnel at the back of this vault. It leads to the boathouse a mile away. I want you to take Leo and go. Clara stood up, panic returning. And you? I am going to open the main door, Rico said calmly. I am going to draw them in, raw, and I am going to end this. No, Clara said, grabbing his arm. That's suicide. Luca is out there. There are dozens of them. It's the only way to ensure you get away, Rico said. He looked at her, his eyes blazing with an intensity that took her breath away. I lost Elena because I wasn't fast enough. I won't lose you. Not you. He cupped her face one last time. Go, Clara. Take my son. Teach him to be better than me. He leaned down and kissed her. It was desperate tasting of blood and salt and goodbye. It lasted only a second, but it seared Clara's soul. Rico pulled away, unlocked the back tunnel door, and shoved a set of keys into her hand. The boat is fueled. Go to the coordinates on the GPS. Don't look back. He turned toward the heavy steel door of the vault, his finger hovering over the release button. Clara looked at the dark tunnel. Then she looked at Rico's back. She looked at the monitors, showing the men outside, the men who had killed the woman in Chicago, who had killed Elena, who had tried to kill Leo. If Rico opened that door alone, he would die. Clara realized something then. She wasn't just Mia's mother anymore. She wasn't just a victim of circumstance. She tightened her grip on the keys. Rico, she said clearly. He paused, not turning around. Go, Clara. No. He turned, shock registering on his face. Clara walked over to the weapon rack. She didn't pick up a gun, she didn't know how to use one. She picked up a flare gun from the emergency kit. You said Salvi thinks you're weak. Clara said, her voice trembling but resolute. He thinks you're alone. He thinks he's hunting a wounded animal. She looked him in the eye. Let's show him he's wrong. We don't split up. We fight. Together. Rico looked at her. Really looked at her. He saw the fire in her eyes. It matched his own. A dark, dangerous smile slowly spread across his face. Okay, Rico said. Together. The steel wheel of the vault door spun with a heavy, rhythmic clank. Rico stood directly in front of it. His assault rifle raised his face, a mask of cold fury. Behind him, hidden in the shadows of the racks, Clara crouched. Her hands were sweating around the grip of the orange flare gun. She had locked Leo in the escape tunnel with a flashlight and his dinosaur. Count to 1,000, she had told him. Like a game of hide and seek. The vault door hissed. The seal broke. Rico didn't wait. He kicked the heavy door outward. The hallway of the wine cellar was filled with Salvi's men. They were expecting a cowering family. They got a demon. Rico opened fire. The deafening roar of the rifle in the confined space was like a physical blow. 2 men dropped instantly. The others scrambled for cover behind the oak barrels of vintage Barolo. Suppressing fire, a voice screamed. It was Luca. Bullets chipped away at the concrete frame of the vault. Rico was forced back, grunting as a ricochet sliced his cheek. He checked his magazine. Low. Come out, Riccardo, Luca taunted from the darkness of the cellar. Don Salvi is growing impatient. Give us the girl and the boy, and I'll make your death quick. Rico looked back at Clara. He signaled with 2 fingers. 2 left, plus Luca. Clara nodded. She moved to the edge of the doorframe. She could smell the spilled wine, the gunpowder, and the metallic tang of blood. Rico leaned out and fired 2 precise shots. Bang! Bang! 2 thuds followed. Just you and me, Luca, Rico roared, dropping the empty rifle and drawing his sidearm. And a leg full of lead. Luca laughed. He stepped out from behind a large shelving unit, his silenced pistol raised. He didn't aim at Rico. He aimed at the vault entrance. Come out, Clara, or I put a bullet in his kneecap. Rico stepped into the open shielding Clara's position. She's gone, Luca. Down the tunnel. Liar. Luca sneered. He took a step closer. The snake tattoo on his wrist seemed to writhe in the dim emergency lights. I can smell her cheap perfume. Luca's finger tightened on the trigger. He had the drop on Rico. Rico was injured slower. This was the end. But Luca had forgotten one thing. He wasn't the only hunter in the room. It's not perfume, a voice rang out from the darkness. It's sulfur. Luca's eyes flickered to the side. Clara stepped out. She wasn't trembling. She raised the flare gun. She didn't aim at Luca. She aimed at the massive, floor-to-ceiling rack of high-proof brandy and cognac directly behind him. Burn, she whispered. She pulled the trigger. The flare hissed through the air, a streak of blinding magnesium white. It smashed into the glass bottles. Kaboom! The alcohol ignited instantly. A wall of blue and orange flame erupted, exploding outward like a dragon's breath. The force of the blast knocked Luca forward, singing his hair and clothes. He screamed, blinded by the flash and the sudden intense heat. He flailed, firing his gun wildly into the ceiling. Rico didn't flinch. He walked through the heat, the flames dancing in his dark eyes. He looked like the devil reclaiming his throne. He kicked the gun out of Luca's hand. Luca fell back, coughing, clutching his burned arm, looking up at Rico with pure terror. "You killed my wife," Rico said. His voice was terrifyingly quiet over the roar of the fire. "It was just business," Luca pleaded, scrambling backward across the wet floor. "Salvi made me, and this," Rico said, raising his gun, "is a family matter." Bang! The echo lasted longer than the shot. Luca went still. The fire was spreading fast. The heat was becoming unbearable. The sprinklers finally kicked in, drenching the cellar in a hiss of water and steam. Rico stood over the body for a second, then turned. He holstered his weapon and looked at Clara. She was standing amidst the broken glass and smoke, the spent flare gun hanging at her side. Her emerald dress was ruined, her face smeared with soot, her hair wild. To Rico, she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He walked over to her, ignoring the pain in his side. He didn't say a word. He simply wrapped his arms around her and lifted her off her feet, burying his face in her neck. "We did it," she sobbed into his shoulder, the adrenaline finally breaking. "We did it," he murmured. "Now let's go get our son." 6 months later. The garden at the Moretti estate was in full bloom. The high walls were still there, but the razor wire was gone, replaced by climbing roses. The press was gathered at the gates, cameras flashing. The headlines had been dominating New York for months. Don Salvi arrested anonymous. Tip reveals evidence of contract killings. The evidence, of course, had been provided by a certain anonymous source who knew exactly where Salvi buried his secrets. But inside the walls, it was quiet. Clara sat on the patio watching Leo chase a golden retriever puppy across the grass. He was laughing, a loud, belly-shaking sound that still made Clara's heart skip a beat every time she heard it. "He looks happy," a voice said. Clara looked up. Rico stood there. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans and a white t-shirt, looking younger, lighter. The darkness that had shrouded him for so long had lifted. "He is happy." Clara smiled. "He slept through the night all week." "And you?" Rico asked, sitting down next to her. He took her hand, his thumb tracing the diamond ring on her finger. The fake ring. "I'm waiting," Clara said. "Waiting for what?" "For my contract to expire," she teased gently. 6 months. That was the deal. The peace summit is over. Salvi is gone. You don't need a fake fiancé anymore." Rico went quiet. He looked at Leo, then back at Clara. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "You're right," Rico said. "I don't need a fake fiancé." He opened the box. Inside wasn't a diamond the size of a skating rink. It was a simple, elegant band with a sapphire, the color of the dress she wore the night she saved his life. "I need a real one," Rico said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't want you to stay because of a contract, Clara. I want you to stay because I can't hear the music without you. You brought the melody back to this house." Clara looked at the ring, then at the man who had walked through fire for her. "I'm not easy, Rico," she warned, tears pricking her eyes. "I have baggage. I have scars." "Good." Rico smiled, leaning in. "So do I. We match." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "Mummy, Daddy, look," Leo shouted from the lawn, holding up a stick he had found. Clara froze. It was the first time Leo had called Rico Daddy in a year. and the first time he had ever called her mommy in the daylight. Rico's eyes shone. He kissed Clara deep and slow, sealing a promise that was stronger than any mafia oath. "Coming, Leo," Clara called out, laughing through her tears. She stood up, hand in hand with the most dangerous man in New York, and ran toward the little boy who had brought them together. The scream at the restaurant had started it all, but the laughter in the garden was how it ended. And that is the end of the Don's lullaby. From a crying toddler in a restaurant to a blazing showdown in a wine cellar. Clara and Rico's journey proves that sometimes the hardest people to love are the ones who need it the most. I want to know what you think. Did Rico deserve a second chance? And was Clara right to use that flare gun? Let me know in the comments if this story tugged at your heartstrings or kept you on the edge of your seat. Please give this video a huge thumbs up. It helps the channel so much. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. I have a new romance thriller coming next week that involves a runaway bride and a grumpy bodyguard, and you do not want to miss it. Thanks for listening, and remember, sometimes a scream is just a cry for help.